At Christmas dinner, my family gifted everyone except me. Then I revealed my empire. The worst thing my family ever did was not hate me. It was forgetting I existed. They did it every single year. My name is Mia. I am 33 years old. Before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Every Christmas was the same. Every year, the drive was always too long. The air inside the car felt cold even with the heater on. It was a 20-minute drive from my place to my parents' house. 20 minutes of quiet dread. Their house was huge. It was the house I grew up in. It never felt like my home, though. It was their fortress. I pulled into the driveway. My brother Dylan's brand new truck was there. My sister Chloe's fancy little sports car was there, too. They were always parked close to the front door, right where everyone could see them. I parked my older, sensible sedan far down the street. Out of sight. That was how I lived my life around them. Out of sight. I took a deep breath. It is just 4 hours, Mia, I told myself. Just eat the dry turkey and go home. I walked up to the door. I did not need a key. I never needed a key. They never locked the door when family was coming. Noise hit me first. Too much noise. Too much laughter. I stepped inside the entryway. The smell of pine and baking cinnamon was overwhelming. It was the smell of a perfect Hallmark Christmas. It was a lie. I took off my coat and hung it on the empty rack near the door. My presence did not stop the noise. Nobody looked up. My mother, Eleanor, was in the kitchen, fussing over the glazed ham. My father, Robert, was in the living room watching a sports game he did not care about. He only watched it because Dylan liked it. I walked into the kitchen. "Hi, Mom," I said. My voice was low. She looked at me. Her face was already tired. Not because of cooking, because of the effort of maintaining the image. "Oh, Mia, you made it." That was all she said. No hug, no warmth. Just a fact. "You made it." "Merry Christmas," I replied. "The appetizers are on the counter," she said, pointing with a long silver spoon. "Try not to make a mess." "I just wiped the counters." I nodded. I did not go for the food. I walked toward the living room. The comparison Dylan and Chloe were on the expensive white sofa. They were already tearing into small gifts. "Hey, Dylan." "Chloe," I said. Dylan barely looked over his shoulder. "Hey, Mia." He went back to unwrapping a tiny box. It was a keychain for his new truck. He laughed. Chloe did look at me. She always looked at me. She scanned my outfit, my shoes, my hair. She did a quick, silent inventory. "Hi, Mia," Chloe said. Her voice was too sweet. "You look busy." That was her word for anything she thought was cheap or plain. "I am fine." "Merry Christmas," I repeated. I stood there for a moment. They did not invite me to sit. They did not ask about my drive. They did not ask anything. I moved to the corner armchair. It was far from the fireplace, far from the central action. It was always my chair. The empty seat. I looked at the Christmas tree. It was huge. It touched the ceiling. It was covered in expensive, heavy ornaments. Under the tree, the gifts were piled high. The pile was truly enormous this year. It was spilling out onto the rug. Red, gold, and silver paper. Big boxes. Small boxes. All wrapped perfectly. I looked for a box with my name on it. I searched the pile. I looked for the small, half-wrapped box that sometimes showed up late. The box that held a cheap candle or a discounted sweater. I searched and searched. Nothing. I knew this would happen. Every year I told myself maybe this year they remember. Every year they proved me wrong. I felt a quiet thud in my stomach. Not heartbreak. It was a dull, familiar ache. The ache of realizing I still hoped. Dylan suddenly shouted, "Yes, Dad, this is awesome!" He held up a thick leather wallet. "Expensive. It is only the best for my boy," my father said, finally tearing his eyes from the blank TV. He smiled big. He never smiled at me like that. I sat back and dinner was called. It was always a loud affair. We sat down at the long mahogany table. It was set formally. Crystal glasses, silverware, too much formality for people who barely talked. I was placed at the far end, next to the window. The cold from the glass seeped into my shoulder. Dylan sat next to my father. Chloe sat next to my mother. The power seats. The loved seats we ate. They talked about their jobs. Dylan was a stockbroker. Chloe was influencing. I was left out of the conversation. I did not try to join. They would just stop talking and look at me. "So, Dylan," my father boomed, "tell Mia about the merger you handled." Dylan went on for 10 minutes. It was complicated business talk. He sounded very important. "Wow," I said when he finished. It was a polite noise. "And Chloe," my mother chimed in, "tell Mia about your trip to Paris, the sponsored one." Chloe talked about designer clothes and fancy hotels. She talked for 15 minutes. She used French words I did not understand. She looked at me twice during this time. Both times were to see if I was impressed. I was not. I was calm. I was just watching. Finally, my mother looked down the table at me. The table was huge. It felt like a mile. Mia, she said. Her tone changed. It became flat. What have you been up to? I put down my fork. This was the moment. The obligatory question, the one they did not care about. My company had a very busy year, I said simply. We launched a new product line in Europe. It has been successful, Dylan snorted. It was a small, quick noise. He covered it with his napkin. My father frowned slightly. Yes, the computer stuff. You still like that, do you? Good hobby. Hobby. That was what they called my career. My 18-hour days. My sleepless nights. My success. It is more than a hobby, Dad, I said quietly. Of course, dear. My mother dismissed me with a wave of her hand. But tell us, did you ever try out for that manager role at the bank? The one your cousin works at? That would be a nice steady paycheck. I did not work at a bank. I owned a company that consulted with banks. There was a difference. A huge one. They refused to see it. The dinner finished. They moved straight to the gift opening ritual. My heart did not pound. It just felt heavy. We gathered in the living room. The pile of presents was a mountain. My father stood by the tree. He was Santa Claus. He read the tags loudly. For Dylan. From Mom and Dad. Dylan got a Rolex watch. A big, heavy silver one. He ripped the paper off and shouted with pleasure. It's about time, son. My father grinned. You deserve that. For Chloe. From Mom and Dad. Chloe got a designer handbag. Bright red leather. She squealed. The sound was high and fake. Thank you. She hugged my mother, crushing her perfectly applied makeup. The process went on. Gifts for them. Gifts from them to each other. Expensive things. Clothes, jewelry, trips, tech gadgets. Each item was perfect. Each item was loved. I sat in my chair, my corner. I watched the flurry of paper. My lap was empty. My hands were folded neatly. The pile began to shrink. The floor was covered in wrapping paper debris. My brother looked at me and winked. A mean, knowing wink. The pile was gone. The floor was a mess of crumpled paper and ribbons. My father looked around the room, beaming. He was proud of the consumption, proud of the spectacle. Then his eyes landed on me. The smile on his face faltered. It did not go away, but it got weak, like a bad battery. My mother caught his eye. They had a quick, silent conversation across the room. A flicker of panic. My mother stood up slowly. She walked over to the mess of paper. She bent down. She looked around. She was looking for a forgotten box. A tiny late box. There was nothing. She straightened up. She fixed her hair. She looked at me. Her face twisted into a half apology. It was not a real apology. It was a cover story. Oh, Mia. We must have forgotten. The words were soft. Too soft. They hung in the air like dust. Everyone paused. My brother stopped admiring his watch. My sister stopped posing with her bag. Then they laughed. Softly. Not a loud, mean laugh. A quiet, dismissive laugh. A laugh that said, "Of course we forgot her. It happens." Dylan said, shrugging. He did not care. Chloe tucked her new bag under her arm. You're always so hard to shop for, Mia. You never tell us what you want. I did tell them. I always told them. Simple things. A book, a sweater, something small. They never listened. My cheeks burned. Not from shame. From the sharp, sudden sting of being confirmed. I was irrelevant. They did not even care enough to maintain the pretense. They forgot their daughter's existence on the one day the world says you must remember. Forgotten again. My father, Robert, saw my face. He did not feel pity. He felt awkwardness. He had to fix the awkwardness, not the pain. He tried to lighten the mood. He had a loud, fake chuckle. Mia doesn't need gifts, Dylan, he said, looking at my brother. She's too busy with her little job. He said little job like it was a school project. Like I was running a lemonade stand. I run a company, I corrected him. My voice was calm. I kept it even. Yes, dear. Very good, my father said, waving his hand. He was not listening. He never listened. But you can't buy a house with a little job. My sister Chloe heard the opening. She always loved a cheap shot, she chimed in. Her voice was too loud, too cheerful. Still renting that shoebox apartment, right, Mia? Maybe next year you'll get a toaster. The room erupted in laughter. My mother laughed. My father laughed the loudest. Even Dylan, who was usually quiet, let out a big laugh. I sat there. I did not move. My hands stayed folded. Shoebox apartment. It was a lie. My apartment was small, yes. It was safe. It was clean. It was near my office. But the word shoebox was meant to cut me. To show everyone I was still small. I was still failing. My cheeks did not just burn now. They were hot. Red. I knew the color was showing. You know, Mia, my father continued, his voice softer now, but still patronizing. You should talk to Dylan. He is doing so well. Maybe he can get you an entry-level position at his firm. Something with a real salary. I stared at him. I already have a real salary, Dad. Sure, sure, he said. He did not believe me. He looked at Dylan, proud of his son's success. He looked at Chloe, proud of her expensive choices. He looked through me. He always did. I closed my eyes for a second. Control it, Mia. Control the noise inside. They were still talking, still laughing about the toaster, still talking about my failure. I opened my eyes. I looked at the tree. I looked at the shining gifts. I looked at their happy, oblivious faces. My sister said something else. I did not hear it. It did not matter. A new feeling came over me. It was not sadness. It was not the stinging shame. It was a cold, quiet realization. They were not just dismissing my job. They were dismissing me. They were laughing at my effort. They were celebrating my invisibility. This was their truth. I was the joke. I was the failure. I was the person they pointed to so they could feel better about themselves. I was the empty seat. I was the forgotten gift. I was the shoebox apartment. And for the first time in my life, that feeling did not make me want to cry. It made me want to finish what I had started. It made me feel strong. I reached out and picked up my water glass. My hand did not shake. It was perfectly steady. I took a slow, deliberate sip of water. I did not need to run away. I did not need to cry in the bathroom. I needed to sit still and watch them. Let them have their moment. They had no idea that their moment was about to end. They overlooked me. The laughter died down eventually. They went back to their gifts. The air felt heavy, but only to me. They forgot the incident in seconds. They moved on to discussing the price of the Rolex and the brand of Chloe's purse. I sat there watching the paper pile up. My mind went far away from the living room. I went back to all the other times. The times that led to this moment. This wasn't new. It started early. In elementary school, I was quiet. Chloe was loud. Chloe was always the center. I remember bringing home a report card. Straight A's, all of them. I was 10 years old. I was so proud. I walked into the kitchen. My mother was making dinner. Mom, look. I held out the folded paper. She took it. She glanced down. Her hands were busy with dough. That's nice, Mia, she said. She didn't smile. Did you finish your chores? That was it. That's nice. An hour later, Dylan came home. He was 14. He was covered in mud. He smelled like sweat and grass. We won the game, he yelled. He was on the football team. He was the star running back. My father stood up from his armchair immediately. He walked to Dylan. He clapped him hard on the shoulder. That's my boy. A winner. I knew you could do it. My mother stopped cooking. She hugged Dylan, messy clothes and all. My champion! They made a big deal. They called the grandparents. They went out for ice cream. I sat at the counter, eating the cookie dough she had told me not to touch. I learned then, winning with your brain was quiet. Winning with your body was loud. They only heard the loud things. It got worse as we grew up. In high school, I was the girl with the textbooks. I worked hard. I got good grades because I had to. I knew they would not pay for my college. They would pay for Dylan's and Chloe's. Not mine. Dylan was a terrible student. He barely graduated. But he was popular. He had the trophies. He had the handshake from the mayor. My father spent hours teaching Dylan how to drive stick shift in his expensive car. They bonded over tools and engines. I asked my father to help me with a complicated math problem once. It was a physics concept, he sighed. He put down his newspaper. He looked at me like I was wasting his time. Mia, he said, why do you worry so much about these hard subjects? You're going to be a nice wife someday. You need to know how to manage a household budget. Not calculus. I took the book and walked away. I taught myself. I stayed up until 2 a.m. I realized then my intelligence was a threat to their idea of me. The scholarship, the college decisions came. Dylan went to the state school. They paid for his tuition, his dorm, his truck, and a generous allowance. He failed out after 2 semesters, but the money kept flowing. They said he was finding himself. Chloe decided she wanted to study fashion design in New York. The tuition was outrageous. My parents wrote the checks instantly. They were so proud of her artistic spirit. My turn came. I got a full scholarship, not to the fancy state university, but to a smaller technical college a few hours away. It was a tough program. It was for computer science. I chose it because I had to be able to support myself. I showed my parents the letter. Full ride, I said. No cost. Everything is covered. My mother squinted at the paper. Computer science? Oh, Mia, that sounds so lonely. Why don't you try for something with people? Like teaching? My father did not even look at the paper. A full scholarship? Well, good. That saves us money. You always were resourceful. He turned back to the TV, no party. No cheer, no pride. The scholarship was not a triumph. It was a relief to them. A successful exit strategy. I was the cheap child, the one who solved her own problems. When Chloe left for New York, They had a huge, tearful send-off dinner, balloons, speeches. My father cried a little. When I left, I packed my own small car. My mother gave me a quick hug. "Call us when you settle in." My father was at work. Dylan was out with friends. I drove away that day knowing I was on my own. It wasn't sad. It was freeing. Chloe's failures, my success in my 20s, the dynamic became toxic. Chloe failed out of fashion school. She came home. She decided to launch a custom candle startup. It was terrible. The candles smelled weird. No one bought them. My parents stepped in. Family funding. They gave her $50,000, then another $20,000. They leased her an expensive office space. They spent money on a ridiculous launch party. She has an entrepreneurial spirit, my father told everyone. She needs the capital to realize her vision. The vision failed. The company folded in 6 months. Chloe just went shopping with the leftover money. My parents were sympathetic. They were proud she tried. During that same time, I was finishing my degree. I worked 3 part-time jobs and took 5 classes a semester. I never asked them for a dime. I graduated top of my class. I got a great job offer at a tech company. I told them about the job. "Oh, good. A cubicle job," my mother said. "Stable. That's what you need." They never asked about my salary. They never asked what I did. They just assumed it was small, safe, forgettable. I bought my first apartment. The small one Chloe called a shoebox. I bought it myself. I saved every penny. It was mine. I told my mother I bought it. "That's nice," she said. "Did you invite Chloe to see it? Maybe she could help you decorate." You know, she has such a flair. They only cared about my life as a backdrop for Chloe's flair or Dylan's success. I finally understood. I wasn't the victim of their anger. I was the victim of their disinterest. Their love was a spotlight, and I was perpetually standing in the dark. Part 5. What They Never Knew. I sat in the armchair, feeling the coldness of those memories. Dylan was showing off his new watch. The watch that cost more than my first year of tuition would have. I looked at their faces. They were still happy. They were truly happy in their perfect, unaware bubble. They don't know who I am, I thought. Not really. They saw the quiet girl, the one who always swallowed her feelings, the one with the little job. What they didn't know was what happened after I hung up the phone with them. What happened after they minimized my success. I started working not just for money. I started working for proof. Proof to myself that I mattered. My job was good, but I saw holes in the market. Big, expensive holes. I started small. I used my tiny apartment as my office. First, one online course. I spent my evenings learning things my college never taught. Advanced coding, security protocols, data management. Then, one side project. I built a small app on my own time. It was a productivity tool for small businesses. I launched it online. I charged $5 a month. It was hard. I slept 4 hours a night. I ate instant noodles. I was alone, but I was building something real. Something that was entirely mine. My first successful app wasn't the productivity one. It was a digital security tool. It was boring, but people needed it. It solved a real problem. I got my first investor check. It was small, but it was huge to me. I quit my cubicle job. I rented a small, cheap office space. I hired one other person. We worked harder than anyone I knew. We built more tools, better firewalls, smarter security measures. It wasn't glamorous like Chloe's fashion blog. It wasn't loud like Dylan's sales floors. It was quiet. It was technical. It was essential. I never told my parents I quit my job. I never told them about the company. Why? Because I knew the response. Be careful, Mia. Don't take risks. You might lose your savings. They would try to manage me. They would try to control the story. I kept the old story alive for them. Mia is fine. She has a cubicle job. She's quiet. They never pressed. They never cared enough to check. The empire rises. The company grew fast. Technology moves fast. The demand for digital security grew even faster. I found a partner, a smart guy named David. He handled the client-facing side. I handled the product. We were a perfect, balanced team. At 29, we merged with a small, specialized firm. It made us bigger. It gave us serious capital. We called the new entity Empire Digital Holdings. It was a bold name. I chose it as a joke at first. A joke against the family who thought I would only get a toaster. I owned more than half the company. I was the chief technology officer and the majority shareholder. I was the boss. At 31, we were huge. We had 3 floors of office space in the city. We had over 200 employees. We were profitable. I hired a financial advisor. I bought the penthouse apartment. Not to show off, but because I was tired of the shoebox. I wanted space. I wanted quiet. I wanted a view that reminded me of how far I had climbed. I was a successful entrepreneur. I was worth millions. Hundreds of millions according to the last valuation. My family knew none of this. They thought I was still struggling to pay rent. I went to their family gatherings. I wore plain clothes. I drove my old car. I listened to their advice about saving money. I smiled politely when they laughed about my little job. Why did I do it? Because I was not ready to share it. Their approval meant nothing. Their praise was cheap. I wanted something more. I wanted them to realize the size of their mistake, on my terms. I kept the secret for 2 more years. I kept coming to Christmas. I kept being the invisible one. Then, today happened. The empty spot under the tree, the laughter about the toaster, the reminder that I was only the punchline. I felt something finally break inside me. It wasn't pain this time. It was the end of patience. The end of the game. I was ready to reveal the empire. The gift opening was over. The loud wrapping paper storm had settled. They were all sitting back, full of turkey and the warmth of their new possessions. They looked satisfied. My father was the first to speak again, circling back to me. He always hated silence. He always had to fill it, usually with a judgment disguised as advice. He looked at my empty lap. He took off his reading glasses and tucked them into his breast pocket. He was being serious now. "Mia," he said. His voice was patronizing, low and fatherly, the voice he used when he was about to lecture me about my life choices. "We are only hard on you because we care." I met his eyes. My expression was perfectly neutral. "We know you are sensitive," my mother added quickly. She held Chloe's new red handbag close. "But you need to be realistic about your career. That little tech thing you do, it's not stable. Not like Dylan's firm." Dylan nodded, running his thumb over the face of his Rolex. "Yeah, Mia, you know I can get you an interview. Start small. Learn the ropes. I'll even recommend you. Family first, right?" He acted like he was offering me a lifeline. Like I was drowning and he was tossing me a damp towel. Chloe scoffed softly, but loud enough for me to hear. She'd never take it. "She's too proud." My father leaned forward. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "The truth is, Mia, family isn't about presents. It's about being honest. You need to stop pretending that tiny apartment and that successful hobby of yours is enough. You need security." He paused for dramatic effect. He thought he was giving me a profound piece of wisdom. "Don't pout, Mia. Family isn't about presents." That was the final straw. It wasn't the forgotten gift. It wasn't the laughter. It was the absolute, deep-seated conviction that I was a failure who needed saving. It was the judgment of my entire life, packaged neatly with a Christmas bow of supposed love. I looked at him. I saw the 23 years of straight A's that earned only silence. I saw the all-night coding sessions they dismissed as a hobby. I saw the mountain of capital they gave Chloe for a failed candle business. I saw the empty spot under the tree. I wasn't sad. The sadness was gone. It had been replaced by something cold and clear. I wasn't angry either. Anger was too hot, too messy. This feeling was clean. It was surgical. I was ready. My body did not move quickly. I moved slowly, deliberately. I reached into the expensive leather tote bag I had placed beside my armchair. It wasn't a designer bag they would recognize. It was plain black leather, high quality, no logos. I pulled out a thin, hard-backed folder. It was sleek, matte black. It felt heavy in my hand. Not heavy with weight, but with meaning. I placed it on the dining table. It made a small thud sound against the polished wood. The noise stopped the conversation. Everyone looked at the folder. They looked at it the way they looked at a strange bug that crawled onto their plate. "What's that? A new recipe?" my mother asked, trying to keep the mood light. "Is that your resume?" Dylan joked. "You already typed it up?" "Good girl." I ignored them. I looked at the folder. I felt the smooth surface under my fingertips. This was it. The moment I chose to stop being the victim of their story. The moment I started writing my own, I pushed the folder slowly across the table. I slid the papers directly toward my father. "I did buy myself something this Christmas," I said. My voice was low. It was calm. It did not shake. It was the same simple, steady voice I used when I led a board meeting. My father picked up the folder. He looked confused. He didn't open it right away. He looked at me, waiting for the punchline. "What's this, Mia?" he asked, still wearing the smile of the benevolent patriarch. "Open it," I instructed. He flipped the cover open. The front page was a summary document. Big letters, financial numbers, legal language. He was losing the thread. This wasn't a joke. He squinted, trying to read the jargon. He couldn't understand it. That was predictable. He looked at the embossed logo on the top corner. It was a modern, angular design. The letters were subtle. They were Empire Digital Holdings. He frowned. "What is this, a stock prospectus? Did you buy some shares?" My brother Dylan leaned over quickly, curious about the paper. He understood finance. He understood money. He looked at the logo and the formal legal language. What's this? Dylan scoffed, mirroring my father's confusion but adding his own layer of contempt. A business plan for your next shoebox app? I looked directly at Dylan. He wore the Rolex. He had the expensive truck. He lived the life they blessed. The company I own, I said evenly. The silence that followed was instant. It was not the soft silence of a pause. It was the hard, crushing silence of total shock. My father dropped the folder slightly. He picked it up again, his hands suddenly unsteady. Dylan froze, half leaning over the table. He stopped breathing. My mother's eyes went wide. Chloe stopped adjusting her handbag. They were all caught. They were all finally looking at me, not through me. What did you say? My father finally managed. His voice was a thin thread. I leaned back slightly in my chair. I let the silence hang for a moment. Empire Digital Holdings, I repeated. It's a digital security and infrastructure firm. I co-founded it 5 years ago. I am the chief technology officer, and I hold the controlling shares. I let the word controlling sink in. It was a power word. The power they never thought I deserved, Chloe whispered, her voice tight with disbelief. You're joking. That's impossible. You have a cubicle job. No, I said to her. I left the cubicle job when my first app went public on a small scale. I've been running Empire Digital for years. Quietly, I tapped the folder on the table again, using a perfectly manicured nail. The sound was sharp. It was the sound of reality breaking through their bubble. We just secured a $300 million contract with an international bank. A 5-year deal. The contract is in that folder, Dad. That's what I've been busy with. The words were simple, direct. They were undeniable. 300 million. The room went completely still. It wasn't the silence after a joke. It was the vacuum after an explosion. My mother, Eleanor, blinked fast. Her polished social mask fractured. She looked scared. She looked at the money. My father, Robert, picked up the paper again. His hands were shaking visibly. He tried to focus on the numbers. He was a man who understood the language of money. He knew 300 million was not a hobby. It was not a little job. It was an empire. He found the valuation report buried deeper in the file. He saw the numbers attached to my name. He saw the projected net worth. It was a number they couldn't even say out loud. He put the folder down. His face was gray. Dylan snatched the document. He scanned the contract terms. His jaw worked silently. He, the successful stockbroker, was staring at a contract 10 times bigger than anything his firm would handle this year. He saw the size of the empire. He saw the size of the mistake he had made. That's impossible, he mumbled. His voice was no longer confident. It was weak. No, Dylan, I corrected him gently. It's just real. Why? Chloe asked, her voice high and desperate. Why didn't you ever tell us? Why did you let us think you were... She couldn't say the word poor or failed. I looked at her, then at my mother, then at my father. Because while you were laughing at me and giving Dylan Rolexes and funding failed candle companies, I said, my voice rising slightly, but remaining controlled, I built an empire. And this, I tapped the folder again, is bigger than all your gifts combined. They were speechless. Their carefully constructed world, where Dylan was the success and Chloe was the artistic princess and Mia was the quiet, struggling child, had shattered. The victim had become the victor. The neglected child had become the power source. They finally saw me. The silence was the loudest thing I had ever heard in that house. It was heavy. It was thick. It smelled like burnt pride. My father, Robert, was still sitting. He looked like his chair had betrayed him. He kept staring at the folder, then at me, then back at the folder. He was trying to find the trick, the place where the numbers did not add up. Dylan was the first to move. He was a salesman. He knew how to pivot. He knew how to change the angle. He quickly stood up. He walked around the table toward me. His face was not angry anymore. It was eager, like a dog that saw a treat. Mia, wait, he said. He tried to put his hand on my shoulder. I shifted slightly. He missed. Why didn't you tell us, little sister? He tried the familiar tone, the friendly tone. It sounded fake. This is amazing. This is incredible. Empire Digital, I've heard of you guys. You're huge in the security sector. He was scrambling. He was trying to claim ownership of my success. Why didn't you tell us? I asked back, my voice flat. Do you remember what you called my business 30 minutes ago? He looked down. I was joking, Mia. You know how we joke. It's Christmas. We're family. You called it a little job that couldn't buy a house, I reminded him. You offered me an entry-level position at your firm. You laughed. My mother, Eleanor, stood up too. She was trembling slightly. She walked quickly to my side. She tried for warmth. She tried for the maternal touch. Mia, sweetheart, she said. She reached for my hand. I let her take it. Her hand was cold and clammy. We are just shocked. This is wonderful news. Why, darling, we are so incredibly proud of you. The word proud felt like a cheap sticker slapped onto a mountain. They were not proud of me. They were proud of the number. You weren't proud when I got a full scholarship, I said softly, pulling my hand gently away. You weren't proud when I graduated top of my class. You were only relieved. You are only proud now because the number is too big to ignore. She tried to hug me. I stayed still. I was like a statue. Don't be cold, Mia, my mother whispered, her eyes filling with instant shallow tears. We just want what is best for you. We were trying to protect you from risky ideas. We love you. Love does not forget the person at the table, I said. Love does not laugh at the effort. The investment pitch, my father finally spoke. His voice was husky. He had gotten over the initial shock and was moving to the business phase. The phase where he figured out how this benefited him. Mia, come sit down, he commanded. His voice had an edge of his old authority. Let's talk about this contract. $300 million. That's a massive security bond. This is highly profitable. You did good, kid. He called me kid, not daughter. He tapped the folder again. Now, what are the next steps? You'll need serious capital to scale up after this. You'll need investors. You'll need advisors who have experience with deals this size. I looked at him calmly. I don't need a security bond, Dad. I am the security bond. Nonsense, he said, waving his hand. We need to talk about investments. Your old man can call up some people, get you access to the right funds. We can bring Dylan in. He has the trading knowledge. We could make this a family venture. He was trying to take over. He was trying to slide into the driver's seat of the empire I built alone. Dad, I said, I used the formal address. The $300 million contract is already secured. The financing is already handled. I don't need investors. Empire Digital is completely profitable. And I already own the company. I paused. I do not need your connections. I do not need Dylan's trading knowledge. I built this entirely without the family. Dylan's face fell. He was shut out. He tried another angle. But Mia, we can help you manage the money. You'll need trust funds, tax strategy. We can help you secure the future for your kids. I was 33. I did not have kids. I did not even have a long-term partner. I have a world-class financial team for that, I said. They are compensated extremely well. They manage my entire portfolio. They are more than capable. The realization hit them. I was completely self-sufficient. I had already solved all the problems they thought they could fix. There was no need for them. There was no way to control me. Chloe was quiet until then. She sat back down, clutching her expensive new handbag. Now she started to cry real tears. They were not tears of pride or shock. They were tears of sudden, terrible self-pity. But Mia, she wailed, we're sisters. We're supposed to share. I was struggling with rent this month. I was going to ask Mom for more money. She looked at me, her eyes red. Can you help me? Just a little? Just a loan? You clearly have enough. We can partner on my next venture. We could call it Empire Fashion. I looked at my sister. The sister whose failed startup got $70,000 of family funding. The sister who called my apartment a shoebox. The sister who laughed at the toaster joke. Chloe, I said, you were struggling with rent because you leased a car that costs more than your monthly income. You do not have an income? You spend money other people earn, she flinched. The words were simple, but they were the truth. I built my company on 18-hour days and zero funding, I continued. You built your company on Mom and Dad's credit card and 6 months of work. I am not funding a bad habit, Chloe. My mother intervened immediately. Mia, don't be so harsh. She's your sister. This is what family does. We support each other. You supported her failures, I corrected her. You let her fail and paid her anyway. You supported my success with silence and mockery. That is not support. That is favoritism. I looked at them all. They were a circle of stunned, calculating, and suddenly desperate people. They were not my family. They were a board of directors trying to execute a hostile takeover. The moment passed. The silence returned, thicker now, full of guilt and resentment. They were angry that I had forced them to see the truth. My father took a long, slow breath. He was defeated. He had lost control of the situation. He tried one last time for the parental card. The soft sell, Mia, he said. Listen to me. We are sorry. We were wrong. We should have paid more attention. We are old. We made mistakes. But we are still your parents. Don't let this ruin your Christmas. Stay. We'll open the wine. We'll celebrate your success properly. He was asking me to forgive them immediately, to forget the neglect, to accept their sudden transactional interest as true love. He wanted to wipe the slate clean so they could enjoy my money. I looked at the tree. I looked at the empty spot under the tree where my gift should have been, the spot that had been empty for 33 years. I stood up slowly. I did not rush. I reached for the black folder. I took it back from my father's trembling hand. He did not fight me for it. I folded the folder neatly. I slid it back into my tote bag. I don't need a party, I said. My voice was low and calm. I spoke only facts. I don't need your approval. And I do not need your apologies. My mother made a choked sound. Mia, please. Where are you going? I paused at the entrance to the living room. I turned back. I smiled faintly. It was a very small smile. It was not joyful. It was the smile of someone who had finished a very difficult job. I don't need gifts, I said softly. I let the words land. They were not about the presents under the tree. They were about the gifts of time, attention, and love they never gave me. Because I gave myself the life you told me I'd never have. It was the final word. The clean end to the conversation. I did not yell. I did not cry. I stated the truth and made it final. I turned away from them. I walked through the entryway. I walked past the coat rack. I reached for my coat. I put it on slowly. I took my time. No one followed me immediately. They were still frozen in the living room. Frozen in the wreckage of their own making. I opened the front door. The cold December air felt clean and sharp. It felt good. As I stepped onto the porch, I heard a sound. It was the crack of the silence. It was my father finally yelling my name. Maya! Don't you dare walk out on your family! I kept walking. I did not look back. I did not respond. I heard my mother start to cry loudly. I heard Dylan trying to calm my father down, probably already calculating how to get me on the phone tomorrow. Their silence cracked louder than any insult ever had. But now the noise was behind me. It was receding. It was their problem now. I got into my old, sensible sedan parked down the street. I started the engine. I pulled away from the curb. I drove slowly, steadily, away from the huge, brightly lit house that was full of expensive gifts and empty of love. I left, calm, steady, and finally free. The drive home was quiet. My old sedan hummed along the highway. The city lights started to glow brighter as I got closer. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't want noise. I wanted the quiet I had craved for years. I kept seeing their faces in my mind. My father's gray shock, Dylan's quick, calculating greed, Chloe's sudden transactional tears, my mother's instant, shallow pride. They were shocked by the money. They were not shocked by their own behavior. That was the difference. I was not sad for them. I was not angry at them anymore. The anger had burned off in the living room, leaving behind clean air. I felt relief. Heavy, silent relief. I pulled into the underground garage of my building. It was quiet here. It was secure. I took the elevator straight up. No noise, no family. Just the silent rise. I opened the door to my home. It wasn't a shoebox. It was a penthouse. It was huge. Floor-to-ceiling windows gave me a wide, sweeping view of the city skyline. The city glittered below, a million tiny promises. I walked straight to the window. I stood there looking out. I was the only person in the world who knew what that view represented. It wasn't just success. It was survival. It was the proof that their neglect did not kill me. It made me build stronger walls. I walked to the kitchen. I did not have to worry about making a mess. I did not have to worry about being quiet. I took a heavy glass from the shelf. I walked to the custom bar area. I picked up a bottle of excellent deep red wine. I poured a glass. I didn't toast myself. I didn't cheer. I just stood holding the glass. I thought about the word victim. I had been a victim of their neglect. I was a victim of their words. But a victim is someone who waits for rescue. I had stopped waiting years ago. I rescued myself. The moment I walked out tonight, I stopped being a victim. I became the author. I sat down on the leather sofa. I took a slow sip of the wine. It tasted like victory. A quiet, patient kind of victory. The phone buzzed on the coffee table. Then again, and again, I reached for it. The screen lit up with desperate texts. From Father, Robert. Mia, call me immediately. We need to discuss the contracts. Let's make this official. We can use my lawyer. He's the best. From Mother, Eleanor. Sweetheart, I am so sorry. You shocked us. Come back. It's still Christmas. We can talk about how proud we are. Please call your mother. From Dylan M. That deal is insane. Congrats. Seriously, we need to talk logistics. I have some investment ideas that will double that. Call me. Don't be dramatic. From Chloe. Mia, please. I didn't mean it about the toaster. I love you. Please just send me the name of your financial advisor. We need to talk about my future, too. Sisters help each other. The texts were all the same. They were not apologies. They were offers to talk about investments. They were attempts to get their hands on the empire. They were trying to manage my money, just like they tried to manage my life. I realized I didn't need to respond. Not with anger. Not with explanation. I picked up the phone. I looked at each name. I did not draft a long reply. I did not send a final cutting message. I went into the settings. I found their contact information. I started with my father. I hit the button, block contact, then my mother, block contact, then Dylan, block contact, then Chloe, block contact. The phone instantly went quiet. The texts stopped arriving. The connection was cut. I felt the pressure leave my chest. It was over. The game was over. I had built the empire to prove I was real. I had revealed the empire to prove they were wrong. Now I had blocked the noise to prove I was free. I put the phone down on the glass table. I looked back at the city lights. They were family, yes, but family is supposed to be the anchor. My family had been a weight I finally cut away, because peace isn't found in their approval. Their approval was conditional. It was based on the size of my wallet. It's found in finally choosing myself. I took another deep breath. I walked over to the tree in my own living room. It was small. It was simple. I had decorated it myself. Under it were 2 small gifts. One for David, my business partner, and one for my one true friend, Sarah. I picked up the book I had bought myself months ago, a first edition of a classic novel I loved. That was my gift. Something I bought for myself, by myself. Something that truly mattered to me. I curled up on the sofa. I opened the book. I started to read. The silence of my penthouse was not lonely. It was full of promise. The promise of work, of love, of friends, of a life I built stone by stone. A life that was truly, finally mine. I had closure. It wasn't the kind of closure where everyone holds hands and forgives. It was the kind that is clean. The kind where I drew a line and said, no more. That night, I did not sleep in the shoebox. I slept in the empire. And it was the best, most peaceful sleep I had ever had. If you've ever been overlooked by your family but built something real in silence, tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story of quiet survival. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because sometimes the best revenge is revealing the empire they never saw coming.